Sarah and David had always dreamed of owning a home together. After years of renting apartments in bustling city centres, they decided it was time to settle down and find a place they could truly call their own. With their savings growing steadily, they began their search for a cosy abode that would provide the perfect sanctuary from the hectic pace of their lives. Their quest led them to the charming suburb of Oakridge, known for its tree-lined streets, historic architecture, and peaceful ambience. One day, while browsing real estate listings online, Sarah stumbled upon a Victorian-style house that immediately caught her eye. The property was nestled on a quiet cul-de-sac surrounded by lush greenery and exuded a timeless elegance. Intrigued, they scheduled a viewing and were instantly captivated by the home's character. The high ceilings, ornate fireplaces, and stained glass windows created a warm and inviting atmosphere. As they explored the spacious rooms, they could envision themselves creating a life together within these walls. After careful consideration, Sarah and David decided to make an offer on the Victorian house. To their delight, it was accepted, and they soon found themselves the proud owners of a piece of history. The excitement of moving into their new home was palpable as they packed up their belongings and prepared for the big day. On a sunny Saturday morning, with the help of friends and family, Sarah and David loaded their belongings into a moving truck and made the short journey to their new home. As they pulled into the driveway, a sense of anticipation filled the air. Stepping inside, they were greeted by the familiar scent of fresh paint and the promise of a new beginning. As Sarah and David settled into their new home, they were filled with a sense of contentment and excitement. The house seemed to radiate a warmth and charm that they had never experienced before. However, as the days turned into weeks, a subtle unease began to creep into their idyllic existence. One evening, as they were preparing dinner, Sarah heard a faint scratching sound coming from the attic. She dismissed it as a squirrel or perhaps a bird that had gotten trapped inside. But the noise persisted, growing louder and more insistent. Curious, David grabbed a flashlight and climbed the narrow staircase leading to the attic. The space was dark and dusty, filled with old trunks and forgotten trinkets. As he searched for the source of the noise, he noticed a small circular hole in one of the walls. He reached out to touch it, and to his surprise, it was warm. A shiver ran down David's spine as he pressed his ear against the wall. He could hear faint whispers, as if a distant conversation was taking place on the other side. The words were unintelligible, but the sound was unsettling. He called out to Sarah, who joined him in the attic. Together they listened to the whispers, their hearts pounding in their chests. As the noise grew louder and more distinct, a sense of dread washed over them. They knew that something was amiss in their seemingly perfect new home. The whispers continued to haunt Sarah and David, their presence a constant reminder of the unsettling mystery that had settled over their home. As the days turned into weeks, the noises became more frequent and more disturbing. They could hear them in the walls, in the attic, even in the basement. The words remained unintelligible, but the underlying tone was one of deep, ancient malevolence. Sarah began to experience strange sensations. She would feel a cold draft brush against her skin, even on the warmest days. She'd hear footsteps in the hallway when she knew she was alone, and sometimes she would swear she could see shadows moving at the corners of her vision. David tried to reassure her, insisting that their imaginations were playing tricks on them. But even he couldn't deny the growing sense of unease that had taken hold. They tried to ignore the strange occurrences, focusing on their daily routines and trying to maintain a sense of normalcy. One evening, as they were preparing for bed, a particularly chilling incident occurred. Sarah was reading in the living room when she heard a loud crash coming from the kitchen. She rushed to investigate, her heart pounding in her chest. To her horror, she found a vase shattered on the floor, its contents scattered across the tiles. There was no sign of a burglar, and the windows were all locked. Fear gripped Sarah as she realized that the strange occurrences were no longer just unsettling. They were becoming dangerous. She knew that they had to confront whatever was lurking within the walls of their home before it was too late. The night after the vase incident, Sarah and David found themselves unable to sleep. The house seemed to be alive with strange noises, and a pervasive sense of dread hung heavy in the air. Sarah felt a cold draft brush against her skin, even though the windows were tightly shut. As the hours passed, the noises grew louder and more menacing. A scratching sound echoed through the walls, followed by a low, guttural growl. Fear gripped Sarah as she realized that whatever was haunting their home was becoming increasingly emboldened. David, unable to bear the suspense any longer, grabbed a flashlight and crept downstairs. He approached the wall near the kitchen, the source of the scratching sound. As he pressed his ear against the plaster, he could hear a faint, rhythmic pounding. It sounded as if something was trying to break through from the other side. Suddenly, the wall began to bulge outwards. With a sickening crack, a large section of plaster crumbled away, revealing a dark, gaping hole. A pair of glowing red eyes peered out from the darkness, their intensity sending a shiver down David's spine. Before he could react, a monstrous creature emerged from the hole. It was humanoid in shape, but its features were distorted and inhuman. Its skin was a sickly grey, and its eyes were filled with a malevolent intelligence. Terrorized, David stumbled backward, tripping over a loose floorboard. He fell to the ground, his head striking the hard wood. As the creature advanced, its claws outstretched, Sarah screamed and rushed to her husband's side. Just as the creature was about to strike, a blinding light filled the room. The creature let out a blood-curdling shriek and retreated back into the hole, the wall ceiling shut behind it. Sarah and David lay on the floor, trembling with fear and relief. They knew that their ordeal was far from over, but for now, they were safe. The following morning, Sarah and David were still shaken by the terrifying encounter of the previous night. They lay in bed, their bodies trembling with exhaustion and fear. As the first rays of sunlight crept into their room, they decided that they could no longer ignore the danger lurking within their home. They got out of bed and made their way downstairs, their footsteps echoing through the silent house. The kitchen was still a mess from the previous night, the shattered vase lying on the floor. As they surveyed the damage, a sense of determination began to grow within them. They were not going to let this creature drive them out of their home. They spent the day cleaning up the kitchen and securing the broken wall. Then, armed with a flashlight and a notebook, they began to investigate the house. They searched every room, every closet, every attic space, looking for any clues that might shed light on the creature's origins. In the basement, they discovered a hidden compartment behind a loose floorboard. Inside, they found a collection of ancient books and scrolls, their pages filled with strange symbols and diagrams. One of the books, written in a language they couldn't decipher, seemed to be a journal of some sort. As they examined the pages, they realized that the book was filled with references to dark rituals and forbidden knowledge. It spoke of a powerful entity that had been summoned from the depths of the underworld, and of the terrible consequences that had followed. Sarah and David realized that they were dealing with something far more sinister than they had ever imagined. The creature that had attacked them was not just a random intruder. It was a manifestation of ancient evil unleashed upon their home, and they were determined to stop it. As Sarah and David delved deeper into the ancient journal, they uncovered a horrifying truth about their home. It seemed that the house had been built on a sacred site, a place where dark rituals had once been performed. The creature they had encountered was a remnant of those ancient practices, a manifestation of the evil that had been summoned and trapped within the walls of the house. The journal also contained a warning, a prophecy that spoke of a time when the creature would be released from its confinement. It seemed that the recent renovations to the house had unwittingly disturbed the ancient seal, allowing the creature to break free. Fear and despair washed over Sarah and David as they realized the gravity of the situation. They were trapped in a house haunted by a malevolent force, and there was no guarantee that they could defeat it. But they knew that they had to try. With a newfound determination, They began to search for a way to banish the creature. They studied the ancient texts, hoping to find a clue, a ritual or spell that could weaken the creature's hold on their home. As days turned into weeks, they pored over the pages of the journal, their eyes straining to decipher the cryptic symbols. Finally, they came across a passage that seemed to hold the key. It described a powerful artifact, a relic that could be used to seal the creature back into its prison. The artifact was said to be hidden deep within the basement, buried beneath centuries of debris. With renewed hope, Sarah and David set about the task of finding it. After days of searching, Sarah and David finally located the artifact. It was a small, ornate dagger, its blade shimmering with an eerie, otherworldly light. As they retrieved it from its hiding place, they felt a surge of energy, as if the artifact was responding to their presence. Armed with the dagger, they made their way upstairs, their hearts pounding in their chests. The creature had been growing bolder. Its presence felt more strongly than ever. They knew that this would be their final confrontation. As they entered the living room, they found the creature standing in the center of the room, its eyes glowing with a sinister intensity. It let out a low growl, its voice a chilling blend of rage and triumph. Without hesitation, Sarah and David charged forward, their hearts filled with a desperate courage. They raised the artifact, its blade shimmering with a blinding light. As they struck the creature, it let out a blood-curdling scream. The dagger seemed to pierce its very essence, causing it to writhe in pain. The creature retreated towards the broken wall, its movements slow and labored. Sarah and David followed, their eyes fixed on the creature. As it reached the hole, it turned to face them one last time, its eyes filled with hatred and despair. With a final agonizing shriek, the creature disappeared into the darkness, the wall ceiling shut behind it. Sarah and David stood there for a moment, their hearts pounding in their chests. They had defeated the evil that had haunted their home, but the ordeal had taken its toll. Exhausted and emotionally drained, they collapsed onto the couch, their bodies trembling with relief. As they looked around the ruined room, they knew that their home would never be the same. But they also knew that they had faced their fears and emerged victorious. They had reclaimed their home and their life. The creature's disappearance did not mean that the danger was over. Sarah and David knew that the evil that had been unleashed upon their home would not rest until it was fully contained. They had to find a way to seal the creature permanently to ensure that it could never return. With the help of a local historian, they discovered that the artifact they had used to defeat the creature was part of an ancient ritual designed to imprison demonic entities. However, the ritual was incomplete, and the creature had managed to break free. The historian explained that to seal the creature permanently, they would need to gather a number of specific items, each imbued with powerful energy. These items included a holy relic, a sacred stone, and a potion made from rare herbs. Sarah and David embarked on a perilous journey to acquire the necessary items. They traveled to ancient temples, explored hidden caves, and braved treacherous terrains. Along the way, they faced countless dangers, from hostile creatures to treacherous terrain. Finally, after weeks of searching, they managed to gather all the necessary items. With their hearts heavy with the weight of their mission, they returned to their home. The ritual to seal the creature was complex and dangerous. It required precise timing and the correct alignment of the stars. As they prepared for the ritual, a sense of foreboding washed over them. They knew that the fate of their home, and perhaps the world, rested on their success. With trembling hands, Sarah and David began the ritual. They placed the items in their designated positions, chanting ancient incantations that echoed through the house. As the ritual reached its climax, a blinding light filled the room and a powerful energy surged through the house. When the light faded, Sarah and David looked at each other, their eyes filled with relief and exhaustion. The ritual had been a success. The creature was sealed away forever, its evil forever trapped within the walls of their home. As they stood in the silent house, a sense of peace washed over them. They had faced unimaginable horrors, but they had emerged victorious. Their home was safe, and they could finally begin to rebuild their lives. The ordeal had taken its toll on Sarah and David. They were emotionally and physically exhausted, their bodies bearing the scars of their terrifying experiences. But despite the trauma, they were determined to move forward. With the help of friends and family, they began the arduous task of repairing their home. The damage was extensive, but they were determined to restore it to its former glory. As they worked, they found solace in the familiar tasks of cleaning, painting, and decorating. Slowly but surely, their home began to feel like a safe and welcoming place again. The memories of the terrifying creature that had haunted them faded, replaced by the comforting sounds of everyday life. Sarah and David found that their bond had grown stronger through their shared ordeal. They had faced their fears together, and their love had been tested and strengthened. They were grateful to be alive, and they were determined to make the most of their second chance. As the months passed, Sarah and David began to rebuild their lives. They found new hobbies, made new friends, and rediscovered the joys of everyday existence. They were cautious, of course, always aware of the dangers that lurked in the shadows. But they were also determined to live their lives to the fullest. One day, as they were sitting on their porch, enjoying the warm sunshine, Sarah turned to David and smiled. "We did it," she said. "We survived." David took her hand and squeezed it gently. "We did," he agreed, "and we'll never forget what we went through, but we'll also never forget how strong we are." As they sat there, watching the world go by, they knew that their lives would never be the same. But they also knew that they were stronger, wiser, and more grateful for the simple joys of life. Despite the resolution of their ordeal, Sarah and David were left with a nagging sense of unease. The creature they had confronted was a manifestation of ancient evil, a force that had been unleashed upon their home. But where had it come from, and what other horrors might be lurking in the shadows? As they continued to research the history of their home, they discovered that it was situated on a sacred site, a place where dark rituals had once been performed. The creature they had encountered was merely one of many that had been summoned and trapped within the walls of the house. The more they learned, the more their fears grew. They realized that their home was a nexus of ancient evil, a place where the boundaries between the worlds were thin, and they knew that the danger was not over. One day, as they were sitting in their living room, they heard a faint scratching sound coming from the wall. It was the same sound they had heard so many times before. Sarah and David exchanged a worried glance. They knew what it meant. The evil that had been sealed away was trying to break free once again.